So, hello again. Right, lots of interesting stuff. Earlier video told you about my California being stumbly around 2,500 RPM. Went out on it the other day with the missus on the back, first time. She kind of liked it. Still stumbling. And I'd done what my pal told me about spark plugs and whatever. Still stumbling. Don't ask me what made me think of this, because I don't know. But I decided to check out the throttle position sensor, TPS, which I'll show you in a sec, where it is and what I did. Shifted it with a gadget, which is a fairly simple gadget. Again, I'll show you in a sec. Most of you will have on it the electronic measuring tool, quite good, measures stuff, and I've been digging in to the little 350 and finding out all sorts of interesting crap. A lot of it I found interesting is I have the workshop manual, and it's not very helpful. It really isn't very helpful. Gives you all the specs, which is very helpful, fair play. But the actual how you do things, sorry, I have to disagree with them. I'd be fascinated to see if I'm right, but I won't know that until I rebuild the bloody thing, which could be a while, because I'll show you how far I've got with that. So I think it's time for me to show you around the shed and see what I'm up to. And we'll wait to see what you think, because I know what I think. It's quite good, it's quite interesting, it's quite satisfying getting the Cali to work properly, because I've tested it since I've adjusted it and it's okay now, and it has, I think it's actually improved the whole zip and pickup and smoothness and everything. Show you around it just now. Right, let's go for our walk around. Okay folks, this is the left hand side of the bike. This is this bit here is the throttly body bit. This is the flappy bit for your air, and then underneath here we have the TPS, throttle position sensor. And basically what this does is when you open this bit for air, it says to the computer or the ECU, engine control unit, hey, we need fuel. And behind here, you can't really see it, behind here into the throttle body is the electronic water pistol, better known as an injector, and that goes squirty squirty in there and away you go. That's kind of it in a very basic nutshell. But what this has, and again I don't know whether you can see it on here, but where it's screwed on here, my finger there, it's a little slot. And there's on the other side. You undo the two screws and you can adjust it. And you are supposed to put a meter on it while you adjust it. Well, that's impossible. It is impossible to do. But you can check the function of the actual sensor with the meter. The meter is the, I'll take you over to the meter. I'll show you the one I use. The reason I'm going to show you this is not because it's a particularly wonderful meter, it's because it's one of these things. And they are, this one is ridiculously expensive. It was about £8, you know, I mean, but it will tell you all you need to know about what's going on. It may not be 100% accurate, but don't get bent out of shape over it. It doesn't need to be. All it has to tell you is that this is operating at all. Because there is, I mean, they'll tell you there's a range that it has to work within. And of course there is. But there is some latitude in it. Because the ECU will take up some latitude. So anyway, I move this. And to do it, undoing these screws should be simple. Oh no. Not in my bloody world. I had to take it all off, which is the screws here, screws underneath, the connector under here, the connector for the, I had to then remove the squirtery injectory thing off, get that out the bloody way, undo these, get the body off in my hand, get it in the vise to undo the fittings. Once it put it back together, sweet as a bloody nut. I have to say it made a hell of a difference. So before you go chasing your tail, if you have a funny misfire anywhere with your Guzzi, have a look at that. It may just help. I don't know whether it will, but for sure it can't do any harm to tick it off the list of things to look at. TPS. First came across these many years ago in cars, because that's my sort of part of my background is cars, and we had loads of trouble with them at one point with I think it was Renault. They had a habit of falling apart inside, and this bit here is basically on some of them, I don't know how this particular one works, by the way, but a lot of them are literally brushes that sweep around and they just wear out. Simple as that, really. Anyway, on top of all of that, we can now go over to this, which is my 350 V35, which I spoke about the other day. And as you can see, we'd pulled a lot of crap off. All the batteries out. I've had all this air filter system out. It's a bloody nightmare, because how you do it, you've got to undo it here, take that bit out, undo it here, take that bit out, slide out the filter, and away you go. It's just a pain, really is. But we've had the carburettors off. Interestingly, they're a little worn, but they're not bad. I've seen one, see a little slide there, I don't know how well that's focusing, but it's a little bit of wear on it. But I've seen worse, I've run with worse, so I think it's okay. Oddly enough, the needles were in the wrong place, and I've now put them in the right place, and that didn't help. So it was a case of taking the carburettor here completely apart, and as they say in all the best things, here's one I prepared earlier. Now this little sucker is obviously the other side. Now down there is a little plunger. See that little T-piece there? That little plungery thing? That's the choke. Now that choke that sits on top with a little spring inside it, hold it down, and this cable-y thing here, where are we? Come on, where are we? There we are. This cable-y thing here is what pulls it up. So what I'm going to do is, in case the cables are binding it, although I have measured it, I'm still not that confident. So I'm going to be having a little fitting it together with the spring down into the plunger without the cable on it. That way I'll know it works. I have checked it. To make sure we have the right distances, and to check it I measured the distance with my very near gauge, and what you do with that is you measure the distance on the plunger while it's on the cable, then with the other end you send that down the little hole, wherever it is, down the little hole, and you can measure that it is reaching the bottom. But I'm still not comfortable with it, so I'm going to put it together with the spring in there, with the cap on it, no cable. I know it's at the bottom, I know there's nothing binding. I know it's going to be a bugger to start, but I can sort that out later on. But we've got to just go through this elimination process at the moment. So that's all where we're at the minute. It's all quite interesting. So, to recap, fix the TPS on the Cali, hunky-dory. Sorting out the fuel on the 350, hunky-dory. Have you noticed there's a theme going on here? It's all fuel related. Drives me nuts. Why can't it's like bloody buses. You can't have like an ignition problem and a fuel problem. You can't have a clutch problem and a front forks problem. No, you've got to have clutch, 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 and they come along like bloody buses. Nightmare. Who would thought it? But that's life in my shed, I guess. But we're getting there. We're getting there. We're beating him. We're not letting him get the better of us. And it's quite interesting how it's all going. Hopefully there'll be a load more stuff happening now. The weather's getting better and we're allowed to play out again, because I'll be playing out a lot more again. And we'll be sorting it out. I'm kind of a bit really frustrated with the 350. I'm desperate to make it run right before I start rubbing things down and painting, because that is going to take it off the road forever. Well, no, not forever, but for a long time, you know what I mean. So I'm going to be sorting all of that nonsense out, and at the same time I want to get it to go properly first. So I'm going to end up doing this work, rebuilding it all, so that I can ride it about to make sure she's right, so that I can take it apart off the road again. It just doesn't seem fair, does it? But that's only it. Seems to be the sensible way to go, which in itself is unusual for me. I don't generally do sensible. I'm not, by and large, the most sensible person on the planet, and that's obvious by the amount of ridiculous motorbikes I've got. Hopefully we'll be there for it. With everything easy with the lockdown, and does anybody know if we're going to be travelling abroad by September? Because amongst other things, I'd love to do the Guzzi open day again at Mandello Delario. One of the best holidays I've ever had. Thoroughly enjoyed myself. Great thing to do. And on the 350, for some weird reason, the guy under the seat has put the sticker from an earlier one that this bike has been to. 1987 I think it was, something like that. So the bike has been well travelled in its lifetime, and it's been to all the best places. It's been come from the factory and gone back to the factory. Be ace to take it again, wouldn't it? But I wouldn't. I'd take either the California or the Norge. I still haven't decided about the California. As good as it now is, I still haven't made my mind up. Hey ho. But yeah, it's all going well. It's all going well. I hope you're all going well. I'm going away now to carry on tinkering. I've got a pair of carburettors to put back together. Oh, that's what I wanted to say. Oh, right. The manual. The manual is very good, like I say, but I'll just show you what I mean about the manual, because I don't believe it. Hang on, 2 secs. Right, workshop manual. In here there is a section on everything, you know, proper manual. All the bits, all the stuff you need to know about your bike and how to fix it and how to use all the special tools you don't buy. But when it comes to the float chamber bit and how to measure the float, I looked at him, I went with it, I bought it, I went for it, even though I didn't believe it. I'm going to try and focus this in for you. Right, now, here's the pivot down here, okay? And it's saying that's the way up you do it. Well, in my book, that float can either flop either way now. So how the hell do you measure it? If you turn it the other way up, so the pivot is at the top, it would then, you could take a more accurate measurement. Because I measured it as it is, and I know they were flooding. The valves are working, by the way. I tested the valves carefully. So the valves are actually working. But the floats were set too high. So it's flooding. They weren't flooding enough to come out the overflows. There's little overflow holes on the sides. So it wasn't coming out of there. But if you take the slide out, plug it into a fuel source, I call it a petrol tank, with a piece of hose on it so you can look down. As you then look down where the fuel comes out of where the needle sits, because you've taken the needle out, and you can see it was leaking up through there. So it's obviously the flow height is too high, not good. So took it all apart, measured it as per the manual, said it was fine, and I know it's not. So I rethought the whole deal quite carefully and used a very accurate system called guessing. And I've guessed where it should be and where I think it should be, and I'm going to have a go at it. Many years ago, when I was dealing with other carburettors, we made a little gadget for in the bottom plug, and you had a feed off it. So you put it in, put fuel into it, piece of clear pipe up the side of the float bowl, you could see exactly where the fuel was. You know, and for those of you old enough to remember monoblocks, our monoblocks, you could buy on the side of the float a perspex end where you could actually see the fuel. It had two little scored lines saying this is where your fuel should be. A brilliant idea. Why don't we all have that these days? But, you know, if the push comes to shove and my estimate doesn't work, my guesstimate doesn't work, I will be devising some way of measuring this more accurately. I'll keep you up to date with that. Personally, I think I've got it right. I really do. And I just think they've been set wrong, and I'm going to reset them to where I think it should be right. We'll test it, maybe adjust again, it doesn't matter, it's not a big job to do. And it's fun, it's all good, it's all good. And we'll see you soon. Like I say, if you've enjoyed this again, excellent. If you haven't, bye. But if you really want to see more, press the subscribe and the share and the little belly thing, and I'll talk to you again very soon. This is me signing out of the shed to get on with my work. You look after yourself.